So if you kind of look at all those three areas and connect those, you should be in really good shape because we all know what gets measured gets done, right? Like that's where people are going to focus. So if you're measuring the wrong things, you're not going to see the impact that you need to see with this work.
Welcome to Blu Thread Conversations. Employer brand has largely gone unmeasured, and when it is measured, it's typically through a talent acquisition lens. Application volume, time to fill, quality of hire. Legitimate numbers, but they're measuring the pipeline, not the brand. Corporate brand has had measurement rigor for decades. Brand equity, perception tracking, sentiment analysis, continuous monitoring. It's treated as a strategic business asset. Employer brand, which shapes what candidates, customers, investors, and partners believe about your ability to attract, keep, and develop the best people, rarely gets the same discipline. And that gap is becoming a business liability, because that perception is now being formed and discussed before anyone visits your company career page, before anyone reads your EVP, and before any human makes a decision to engage with you. Today we're talking about what it means to finally measure employer brand with the same rigor as culture and corporate brand. What the metrics most organizations rely on are really telling them. And why in a world where your reputation is being scored constantly, whether you're watching or not, measurement isn't optional anymore.
Hello.
Hello, Stacy Parker. It's been a minute.
It's been a minute since we've done one of these, hasn't it?
Yes. I've
Uh,
missed it.
did you? I think because I've been doing the other series,
Yes.
I feel like the podcasts are never ending, but they're fun, and I love that some of our team is starting to participate and share their insights too. It's really awesome to watch.
I know. I love that too. A lot of great topics too,
Yeah,
right? Like we've got three
yeah,
coming out, which is
yeah.
amazing, amazing work, Stace. Love it.
Talking about Showtime.
Yeah.
How was this weekend? Another dance
Yeah.
competition, Dance Mom.
Yeah. So, Stace, you and I both dance moms. You're a former dance mom. So, we
Warmer.
would like to, I think we should give a shout out. If we have any listeners who are dance moms,
Yes.
we love you.
Yep.
We see you. We respect you, and you're going to get through it.
It's a special time of life.
It is a special time of life, and you're going to get through
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So, yes, sending you lots of love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really sweet. So, podcast topic
Yes.
today, measuring employer brand. Like as a theme, it's kind of like, oh gosh, do we want to talk about it? But it's something that I think we're really good at and something that the industry has been increasingly curious about. We see it on search trends, and it happens to be something that companies need to get on top of if
Yes.
they are going to get any kind of return on investment. It's-
And I'm so curious, Stace. I mean, you and I have been so passionate about this topic, and naturally we would be because we do work for our clients where we want to see an impact. If we
Yeah.
can't, like, that's our motivation, right? We want to see an increase in performance. Or how do you think, like, why do organizations get away up until now? I think we're going to see more with not measuring the impact of the investment they make in employer branding. Like, why do you think that happens?
Yeah. I think there's a few things. It's the big question of how has it been 10 years,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That
Because you spend money, like you spend money on, several things, and it may not be the same dollars that you would spend on a marketing campaign, but it's still significant for
mm,
HR leaders, the investment they make on their employer brand. And it's an important investment. Yet,
mhm.
many,
Yeah.
to your point, are not measuring it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think there's a few reasons. One, I think by nature of the term employer brand, there becomes this uncomfortable who owns it. We've seen since we started Blu Ivy some 15 years ago, the debate on who owns employer brand. Is it marketing? Is it talent acquisition? Is it HR leadership? And I think by nature of that lack of definition, um, how it's measured and what measured improvement is a confusion, and there's no core stakeholder. And then I think the other thing is a little bit of by nature of our industry and the way that we recognize great employer brand launches, the awards that are in the system. And I think there's been such a value on get an EVP to launch and the big exciting launch that those factors have all led to this moment where clear KPIs, clear return on investment have been lacking.
And we've even, right, Stace? I think we've talked about this in previous podcasts where we're now having former clients come back to us and say, "Okay, you did great work, but in our eyes, it was, and in the executive team eyes, it was like, okay, you did a launch, you did it. We have an EVP, done. On to the next."
And it doesn't take hold within an organization because there hasn't been clear measurement, like an employer brand system. So I think when I look at what has happened, and what I always want to do mentally is go back to like why employer brand strategy became a thing in the first place. Why does it matter for the business?
Yep.
And and how do you measure what matters for the business?
Right.
And when I started looking first at like culture, so measuring culture is inherently natural to organizations now. And I think like what actually, let me ask you as a former CHRO, what do you think the most common, most reliable sources of measurement of culture are today?
Mm. Well, common and reliable. Like, I think, I'll answer common. When I speak with HR leaders, what they are assessing when it comes to culture, and first, it's a multitude of metrics and they're not connected. And I can just imagine what their CEO, what they think when they get this scorecard with just so many metrics, not consistent in the way they're measured or the frequency. So let's talk about engagement surveys. So at most, organizations will do that, what, 4 times a year?
At most of
At
them that I
most.
talk to, it's once a year.
So they're measuring engagement surveys 4 times a year. They're looking at turnover, which is a lagging indicator of culture performance. They're looking at, when it comes to culture, referrals, right? So if they get more referrals, but that is a tricky metric as well because you may not be hiring, and referrals, people are only going to refer for roles that not only, do they want to promote the company, that are also a good fit. Some companies, but very few, are measuring kind of advocacy.
Mhm,
So how often are their employees talking about the organization? But that's very, very few. So I would say
mhm.
predominantly it's engagement surveys and turnover
Yeah,
rates.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that's when I talk to board executives, that's what they always point to is engagement surveys. We love to see the benchmarking,
Yes.
trends over time, turnover. It gives us a sense of whether things are falling apart, but like you said, lagging. And what was interesting, so I was like, well, when did engagement surveys become the thing? And it really wasn't until like the late 90s where it started to really hit. So I know Great Place to Work was something that you always loved because
Yeah.
it touched on trust, and it was
Yes.
a really good barometer to
Yes.
use internationally. But it really wasn't until like the late 90s that took off. And I'm curious, from your experience working with CEOs,
Mhm.
do you think that they took off because of the awards associated with it?
Mhm.
Like from a business lens, what do you think mattered most to the CEO in that engagement survey? Was it key metrics that showed performance, or was it the awards to be recognized as a best workplace culture?
Yeah, so I mean, gosh, I remember when I was a HR leader, there's a lot of importance put on the awards. And as you and I both know, not all awards are created equal. Like there's awards out there where you don't even have to have your employees participate in the award and give their feedback, which just so it's just based purely on marketing and what type of programs and practices you have, which you and I both know you can have the best maternity top up. You can have benefits for your pets. You can have treat day every day. But if there's no trust, then that will impact productivity. But
Yeah.
for sure. But there are some great awards. Like I love Great Place to Work. But once again, it's one point in time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
think like that it is interesting. Like the awards is my organization seen as a best workplace. We can call it a vanity. There's depth to it, but in some ways a vanity metric. That's why kind of post 90s, early 2000s, it started to become deeply entrenched to an executive.
Yes.
Because to say I have a best workplace, as
Yes.
is evidenced against all of my peers, was really important to how the business was positioned, perhaps to shareholders, perhaps to your board, whatever. It mattered in that case. And then
Yeah.
you look at the employer brand and how employer brand awards have come out over the last 10 years.
Yes.
And it's really like the biggest ones are around recruitment advertising. They're
Yeah, I
advertising
was gon
awards.
yeah. Like, mostly creative, right? Like, that's how
Mostly
you're meant.
creative. So
Yeah.
they're celebrating the creative launch. Look at how
Yes.
beautiful this creative campaign was. Look at how beautiful the landing page of a website was. Let's look at how beautiful a social media campaign was. But the impact of the business, of leadership, of performance, of advocacy, and experience, those things were not being measured or recognized. So
Right.
the industry kind of did in this moment the vanity metric of let's celebrate a launch, let's celebrate what the ad agency is doing, not what
Right.
our business how our business is evolving. And I think that's kind of at the core what has got to shift now. If anybody is looking at the sirens on what needs to happen right now with culture and employer brand transformation, to me, it's like we got to move away from vanity and start talking about what the CEO is worried about when he or she is sitting with the board is performance.
Yeah, and maybe, Stacey, I think it would be helpful for you to share some metrics that you and I see from people that we've worked with that they're reporting to their CEO on a regular basis that could give that CEO a false sense of security. For example, like you've mentioned, I think being recognized as a top 100 employer in Canada or top 10, that could give you
A false sense.
of security, right?
Yeah.
Like because that's not like it's missing key,
Mhm.
factors that create high performing and highly motivated and productive workplaces. What else
Mhm.
have you seen that could give that CEO a false sense of security?
Well, I think engagement surveys, to be quite honest, a lot of
Yep.
engagement surveys to date to me are giving a false sense of security.
Yep.
Because we know from all of the data that's available that globally engagement is at historic lows
Yes.
globally. Productivity we know to be at historic lows. Yet we often, when we're talking again to board leaders, CHROs, private equity, what we hear is, well, we engagement is fine. Engagement
Mm.
levels have remained status quo. So we're good. To me, that's giving a false sense of security because all that is really designed to measure is how good are you today at making sure you don't have turnover.
Yes.
And in a world where job security is, kind of the number one issue that we're hearing from people, you've got a lot of people that are actively disengaged
Mhm.
and staying with the organization. What you don't have a barometer on is how much extra energy people are willing to put in to help the company succeed, and that's what CEOs really need to hear.
And engagement surveys worry me too because I think it's great. Like a lot of organizations are holding their leaders accountable, right, to creating a great workplace. But what they're holding them accountable often is the engagement survey results. So then the leaders are actively promoting getting their teams to complete these engagement surveys. And we're hearing when we listen online, which is objective, unbiased, just listening to employee comments online, we're hearing more and more this fear of speaking up and
Yeah.
psychological safety, right?
Yeah.
Because they're being pressured to fill out this survey. They know that their manager is responsible for, you know,
Yep.
has to be accountable for a certain score. That's a lot of,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So their completion rates are down. That's a really good point. We
yeah,
know statistically that completion rates of engagement surveys have gone down about 30%. Interestingly, same on the customer satisfaction.
right.
Customers don't trust surveys simply because they don't feel like the time, we hear this all the time from employees, I don't feel like the time I also put into answering these surveys
Right.
results in anything different. So if I don't trust that my voice can be heard and I'm safe, and I don't trust that the time I put into responding is going to make any dramatic change on my experience, then it's not a really great single source of culture.
And I'm sure too, so we've talked about engagement surveys, but I've also seen Stace on dashboards, a multitude of metrics on LinkedIn followers,
Yes.
um, applicant volume, website visits, and I've just never seen so many metrics in my life. And once again, I always like to ask, why? Why do these matter? What is the CEO gonna do with all of these? Um, and they can also, right, Stace, some of those give you that false sense of security as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, it's kind of like, I take it to, like, branding. At the end of the day, you've got your overall brand. What are the core objectives of the overall brand? Well, they are ultimately about, positioning the organization for market share growth, for customer, loyalty, and then there's marketing pieces that go underneath, and every one is a layer that moves up to ultimately the brand. And an
right.
employer brand, what I often see is, to your point, it's like the lowest level of funnel are the metrics that are being reported on.
Yeah. Yep.
So the CEO doesn't actually care about that. The so what is not how many more people have come to your website or how
No.
many stayed for 30 seconds versus 15 seconds. The so
Yeah.
what is not how many people made a comment on a social post or shared a social post. The so what is not how different your EVP headline is than your three competitors. The so what is what's happening to the business, the performance, the
Yep.
extra energy that your employees put into work, like, or how much people want are clamoring to join your organization. Always like to go back to the founder as well of employer brand, Simon Barrow. Like, why did he build it? What was he trying to accomplish?
Yeah.
And what he was trying to accomplish was this idea that there's no branding your way into a great workplace. In order to do it, you have to have great leadership alignment and cohesion. You've got to be really clear on what it is that people want, like intrinsically, what do they want out of their work contract with you, and that has got to be able to be conveyed externally. So it's leadership, it's experience, and it's reputation. At the end of the day, that was why Simon Barrow founded that concept years ago, and that's your management system
Yeah.
versus a campaign. So we need to shift away from those campaign metrics,
Yeah.
those, and move back into what is an employer brand management system doing? Because that's what the CEO cares about.
So what would that break that down then, Stace? Like, what would a valuable, employer brand scorecard look like?
Well, of course, I'm I'll start with talking about how we would approach
Yeah.
anything, right? Which is first leadership. Like at the end of the
Mhm.
day, an organization, an employee experience, the reputation, it starts from the top. It
Yeah.
starts from leaders knowing what the EVP is, knowing what it means to them, how they use it, talk to it, govern with it. So leadership. First of all, you've got a great leadership team that knows the employer brand, delivers on it consistently. They seem cohesive and aligned.
Yep.
Talent really believes in them and trusts them. You used the
Yep.
word trust earlier, and that's it.
Love it. Yep.
Yeah. Do you feel the same way about the
Agree.
leadership lens, or is there anything
Yep.
else that
And there's both. No, I agree. And there's like how are leaders be trusted internally and are they also promoting like, are they the biggest advocate externally, right? So you
Mhm.
need both, viewpoints,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think you
Yeah.
gotta start with leadership. Yep,
Leadership, number one, I want to join great company leadership.
yep,
Talent trust corporate logos less than ever. Today, they want to know that the leaders that they're joining and giving their best to have a really clear line of sight that they can be trusted and are human focused as well.
yes,
Then culture
yes.
is the next piece, and that to me from a culture perspective, that is that the experiences, the accountability, the way people are working and who they're working with are top notch.
Yeah, I agree, like, making sure that I always like to look we do this when we start working with clients. What are you talking about as an organization? Like, what are your culture strengths? What is your branding currently look like? And what is the actual experience?
Mhm,
If
mhm.
there's any misalignment, you and I both know that
Yeah,
that's going to impact performance.
yeah,
So make sure that you understand what your strengths are and that what you are talking about your strengths, that it is aligned with the actual
yeah,
experience. Yeah,
yeah.
that's key. Yeah.
So you've
Yep.
got leadership, you've got culture, which is really about the consistency of the
Yep.
experience, and then reputation is, the third piece, and that reputation, um, is, of course, how are people talking about you online? Because the generations that, are the younger ones within your workplace right now or that you're attracting for a future, they are far more inclined to talk about their experience online. That's the world they've grown up with, that you
Yes.
review on TripAdvisor, you review on Instagram, you like their external review first. So that source of truth on Indeed, on Glassdoor, on Ambition Box, you name it, that's their single source of truth.
Yes. And making sure, I mean, this is how you and I started Blue Ivy Group, Stace, making sure that the head of marketing or and the head of HR are working together because people don't want to work for a company that doesn't treat their employees well. They also don't want to work for a company where customers aren't happy. So it's really
Exactly.
important to, yeah, we
Exactly,
look
and
at
that's
both.
my like, that's when I look at the value chain of
Mhm.
employer brand, it always comes down to we're all here to deliver an exceptional customer experience. It's all
Yes.
gotta tie to that, and
Yes.
project after project after project, we can look at that value chain of leadership issues and culture gaps and the employer brand, weakness, and then see it directly translate to the customer experience. Malcolm Gladwell, who
Mm.
we all love, his second book on the tipping point talked about the fact that you need about a third of any kind of group to be absolutely in love with an experience, like so that they're mad advocates. You need about a third of them to do that, to have any transformational change. So when we think about like engagement scores, we think about ENPS scores, and we think
Yes.
about like what we need today, what leaders need for customer retention, for this employer brand advocacy, we need to make sure that all of the work we're doing is to shift at least a third of our employees from engaged to madly in love advocates. And that can only happen if we're using employer brand to shape that leadership change, that experience change. Because no ad campaign is going to do that. And that's what I love about the consistency we have with the tool we have, because it can just on a single page PDF show you um, exactly how to transform from engaged to greatly in love advocates.
Yeah. I want to talk about AI because I think that's on everyone's radar. Why? And I think this is honestly why another reason why the importance of measuring employer brand impact is even more important with AI because of um, the information that you and I know you can find online about an organization. But why do you think, how do you feel AI is changing the world of employer branding? And why is it even more important to make sure that you're measuring the right things when it comes to employer branding and culture impact?
Mhm. Mhm. What AI proves very quickly is that employer branding is not a communications exercise. And for all of those that are focusing on getting an EVP out at the lowest price, fastest speed, those that are focused on making sure that the copy is slightly differentiated from competitors, that's not making a measurable shift on how AI is going to be able to govern behaviors and experiences internally. Increasingly, you can't control the narrative as leaders
No.
because of AI. And it's moving at an incredible clip. So, if you
Yeah.
can't control the narrative, that means that your employer brand is going to be in constant transformation. So, you better be listening on taking that data information and evolving very quickly. You better understand and have the foresight of what's coming because it's being shared en masse. I mean, people are coming to your organization more and more through Chat GPT and Claude and Perplexity, Gemini than they are from your Google search and your website. They're going direct to your company from AI. So how AI is informed is often through your employer reputation. That evolution, the pace with which messaging is changing, the importance of governance over communication for employer brand
Yes.
and culture, um, and then just how fast the reputation, the story of your leadership team, the story of your employee experience is being shaped to customers and stakeholders through AI search.
Yeah. And what questions I'm sorry, I have, like, what questions do you think, because I think it's often I mean, Joey did that podcast on the greater why, right? Like, as opposed to I need an EVP or I need this or I need an employer branding strategy. What questions should people that own employer branding be able to answer for leaders? Because I think that will shift people's thinking and metrics. Because, for example, one question if I own employer branding, I should be able to answer for my CEO is how are we perceived? Social LinkedIn followers isn't going to tell you that. So I think that's another test to see if the metrics that you're currently measuring are the right ones, like, coming
Yeah.
up with those questions, because for sure, you've got to be able to tell, how are we being perceived? Is the experience that employees have aligned with our promise, with our commitments? Engagement surveys won't tell you that.
Yeah.
What other questions, Stace, would you feel are really important for leaders and employer branding leaders to understand, to know?
hmm Well, I'll start with the fact that our view, again, is that an employer brand management system has a really strong value chain, which is leadership, employee experience, the culture, and the reputation. And when we look at leadership, leadership has not only a responsibility to deliver great execution and alignment and clarity on who the organization is, why they exist, what they're doing, and what your role is in doing that. They also have increasingly, because of AI, a massive responsibility to do that externally. Platforms are favoring individuals versus corporations. The clarity of who I'm working with matters so much. So I would ask an employer brand leader today, how much of your employer brand story and reputation and perception is shaped by you and your division
Yes.
versus the
The peop
executives that you entrust to steer the clarity and strategy of the company. I think I would also ask, what are the 2 to 3 KPIs that matter most to a CEO in the work that you're doing? Do you know what they are? Because and how are you tracking to make sure you've got the right systems in place to track them? Finally, I think I'd really want to know from employer brand leaders that are looking to elevate. Uh, are you aware of how many employees are this top 33%? Because engaged, again, don't do
Yes.
anything new for the business. Engaged means nothing. It just
Yeah.
means they're not leaving. I wanna know what percentage are those individuals that are in love with the company who are advocates, not part of an employer brand advocacy program, are self-selected, in love advocate voices of the organization. And then what percentage of your customer base are really advocates, really proud, in love with whatever it is that you offer?
Right.
Because that's where the shift happens, and that's where you as an employer brand leader matter more than a campaign, more than a cost center.
Right.
It's when the CEO can see that you're driving that.
Yeah. I love that. So, I mean, as a wrap up, Stace, I think we've like shared some lessons learned, some metrics that really aren't working when it comes to measuring the impact of your employer brand and culture strength. I think you shared some really good areas to focus on when it comes to employer branding, like starting with leadership is key, and then culture and reputation, and third, making sure that you are answering the right questions and that you are also aligning what you're measuring to what's most important to your C-suite overall and to your CEO. So if you kind of look at all those 3 areas and connect those, you should be in really good shape because we all know what gets measured gets done, right? Like that's where people are going to focus. So if you're measuring the wrong things, you're not going to see the impact that you need to see with this work.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's the one thing that we want to drive out of this? I think it is that between leadership and experience, you're ultimately turning your employees and your customers into really proud
Yes.
advocates that love your organization. That's the
Yeah.
secret of growth.